Sup nerds, I'm Tom with Never...
I do the Star Wars videos. Sup nerds, I'm Wes.
I'm Tom.
Today we're taking a look at Star Wars Destiny, the new card and dice game from Fantasy Flight Games. So Destiny is going to be a collectible game, meaning you don't always know what you're going to get in the booster packs. They do have two starter sets out right now, one for Kylo and one for Rey, a good guy and a bad guy. These have set 25 cards and 9 dice that you get. The booster packs give you 5 additional cards and 1 die each.
In Destiny, you come to the table with a 30-card deck that you built yourself, and then you have 1 to 2 of these characters that are kind of, these are your homeboys. These are the guys you don't want to die. If these guys ever die, you lose. Also, if there's ever a point when you don't have any cards in your hand or in your deck, you lose as well. It's pretty simple gameplay, actually. You have you don't really have like my turn and then your turn. Our turns kind of go consecutively, where I take an action, you take an action, I take an action, you take an action, until we both pass, and then we do, we draw back up and everything. So we're kind of preparing for this back and forth duel until we kind of got nothing left to do. And then we gear back up again where we redraw dice and refresh everything, and then we go at it again. And we're mainly trying to kill the opponent's characters. And we do that by playing cards from your hand and, kind of sort of, I was going to say tapping, by exhausting your characters and rolling their dice. And then another action is to activate them. So if I were to roll my dice, and I get damage on one of the dice. Let's say I get damage on this Kylo Ren die, and I want to use it. Well, it's an action to use it, so I just use my action rolling the die. Now I have to pass player turn priority over to my opponent. So they have a turn, they have an opportunity to mess with my dice. There's, cards that can just straight up remove dice or turn them to a different face or anything. I think that aspect in itself is something that I really love. That's why Netrunner is one of my favorite games, because most agendas need to be advanced 3 times. Install, advance. Ooh, it has to sit there for a turn, This is the same thing. Roll a die. Ooh, what are you going to do? Nothing? Oh, thank God, because I'm going to use them now.
I do want to preface this by saying that we weren't able to actually build full competition 30-card decks. We only got the 2 starter sets and 4 booster packs to start off with, so we were able to fiddle around a little bit, swap a few cards in and out of our decks, but we weren't able to get the full deck building experience. So when we're talking about the gameplay, we're really not going to be talking a lot about deck building and how it works as like a deck building game. We're going to talk more about the gameplay and the components and what our thoughts are on the game going forward. So as far as gameplay goes, it's not a super complicated game. I feel like it's pretty easy to teach someone how to play. Of course, the meta of what's going to be deck building and what dice you want to put and what cards you want to put is going to make it a more extreme game. But it's definitely not, like some of the LCGs I feel like take a round or two to actually feel what the game is like. I feel like this can be a plug-and-play game where you sit down, you open 2 starter sets and play, which I think is a really nice thing to have, that it's not super intimidating to learn how to play the game.
No, absolutely. The fact that it's simple, sometimes when I see a really simple game, I don't like it. Honestly, this isn't that. It's not so simple where it's just kind of boring. It's simple enough where I would liken it to Magic. Probably I'd say when Magic started off, it had a very simple idea. And by now there's all these different formats and so many different keywords to know. I feel like this is starting the way that Magic started. It's starting off slow. Eventually they'll start adding in keywords and tons of different factions and new deck building rules. There's so much potential for it to expand in complexity, but I don't want it to just yet. I want to enjoy this the way it is. And then when I get tired of it, sure, add some more keywords on there to make cards different.
Make a 3rd faction, because it's a Star Wars game. We know there's going to be a Scum and Villainy faction. Our guess is green and brown dice, probably.
Green and brown.
Yeah. We're just waiting.
But what I really want to see is more stuff from the prequels. This is the first time, yes.
You see, there's a Darth Maul card.
Yeah, and there's, what's his name? Emperor Palpatine talking to the weird fish guy from Episode 1. Darth Maul, Cannon Fodder, look at that, another droid from Episode 1.
I know that there is a Count Dooku card out there.
Okay.
There are cards from other spots in the series of the videos, and I'm sure that as the game grows and expands, we've always seen a small glimpse of what's available in the booster packs.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sure they're going to be introducing more and more characters and expanding this game, which is exciting for Fantasy Flight, because they haven't done that in any of the other games gone past the Rebels cartoon series. So one thing I want to go back to, you talked about how it kind of compares to Magic, how it compares to Netrunner. When everyone saw this game, they were thinking, oh, Star Wars Dice Masters. It's a collectible card and dice game, so obviously that's what everyone came to mind, because that's the other card and dice game. once I played it, it really didn't feel anything like Dice Masters. The game I kind of compared it the most to is Ashes, actually.
Ashes, Rise of the Phoenix Spawn.
Obviously the dice play a little bit different role because in Ashes, dice are mana, and in this game, dice are additional actions. But just the kind of the turn order and the game structure mirrors Ashes a lot.
Yeah, the action back and forth thing. And I do like the fact that these aren't your resources, because it really does suck in Ashes if you roll a bunch of ones and you don't, you know, that doesn't really happen here. I mean, there is a choke effect. There was a card I played on you where instead of gaining 2 resources every turn, you only gain 1.
It's the worst.
But it's great. See, that's where I say, like, it's simple, but there are a couple different strategies. Like, choke is a big meta for Game of Thrones, really just limiting. It doesn't matter what I do, I'm just limiting what you do. Same thing with, like, they force you to discard cards. You can, remove people's resources, you can get rid of their dice. There's a good amount of different things you can do, different decks you can build, and yet it's still a simple game. It's not a lot of rules to do that, it's just which avenue do you want to take.
I think that's a good point. You can build a cull deck just trying to get their thing done. You can build a super heavy damage deck. You can build a super defensive deck just to try to outlast them.
Wes, do you think you could build a deck that doesn't have any dice except for the ones that you have on your main characters, like with just a bunch of direct damage and healing effects and shields?
I don't see why you couldn't. I'm going to need to see what cards come out that, kind of would be able to put in that deck, and I don't know how it would compete. I think it would be a very unique deck. The dice can get really frustrating because, you spend 2 turns to roll, you spend a turn to roll your die, and then you get blanks, and you don't get to do anything. So then you discard cards to re-roll the die, and then you get blanks again, or you get like a resource, but you really need an attack. So I think it would be really interesting to see a deck built without other dice.
Or at least very, very few. Very minimal.
I mean, again, there's 30 cards in the deck, and you get 6 dice other than your starters. So there already are only, 6 of the 30 in here that give you dice. So it's not as heavy a dice game as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, which is good.
It is good. The dice play a much smaller role, which helps it be more strategic. If it was just constant dice every single thing you did, people hate that because you can literally lose a game to a crap deck and an inexperienced player just because the dice hate you.
And that is an issue I have with Dice Masters a lot too, is that you re-roll your dice all the time, and they are everything you do. They determine how your turn is going to go. And here it kind of doesn't. And there's a lot of mitigating your probability here. The one card that does damage if you get a blank face, that's so great, because the blank face, every single card has a blank face, and you're like, well, I know that I have a 1/6 chance of nothing, but then you have a 1/6 chance of 2 damage. Great. I love mitigating probability in games, and this game does it perfectly.
So kind of the elephant in the room in this game, I think, is the dice. Everyone sees pictures, and they're like, oh, stickers on the dice. And I was like, that was going to be a deal breaker for me. Is it the stickers and the dice? And then, we saw releases on, no, it's not stickers, it's, actually printed on and then sealed over. And I was really hesitant. Holding these dice and seeing them, I was very surprised. They look so much better in person than they do on pictures, for one.
Oh yeah.
They're a little bit big and clunky, but because you're not rolling, you never roll 10 dice at once. You're rolling 2 dice. If you get a lot of upgrades, you can maybe roll 3 or 4 dice at once. I'm sure you could roll a bunch, but you're not rolling a ton at once. And so if you're only rolling 2 dice, you kind of want a bigger, chunky feel to make them give you that satisfaction of rolling them. I do have a complaint with the dice, though, and that's keeping them separate. And like when you're deck building, one day when you've gotten a bunch of booster packs, and this is a couple years in the future if this game lasts, and you have hundreds of dice. The way that in Dice Masters, every single character has a different color and not color necessarily, but design in the dice. Some are marble different, some are sparkle different. These, because there's only the 4 colors right now, and it's the actual printed artwork on the dice. And even there's a little number on them that lets you know exactly what card that goes to, because some of the artwork's even hard to follow. I can see it being really frustrating trying to be like, oh, I really want to put this, Wedge Antilles card in my deck. I'm building a Rogue Squadron deck. I want to put Wedge in there. Where's my Wedge dice? And I don't know how I'm going to organize this to find those dice easy. And I can see that being a frustration in the future.
Yeah, a storage solution for a collectible game is always an issue, especially much like Dice Masters, where if you have just cards, okay, but you have cards plus other things, plus tokens, plus these dice. And the starter set did come with a nice little tray that nobody's going to use.
It's not that nice a tray.
I mean, it's a nice thing to include. But again, hardcore gamers aren't going to use this. If you're really into a collectible or a living game, you don't keep that box. You don't keep the main box. You throw that out and you keep them all in like a card box because you're going to get another one or a big one. You just carry out the deck you want in a deck box or something. So a storage solution to make the whole game look pretty and organize your collection well, that's something that we're definitely going to need for this.
And the last thing that I'm not sure about with the dice is when you're opening the booster packs and you get a character that you really like let's say you get the rare Luke. I got a rare Luke. It comes with one dice. So if you want one die, I'm so sorry. So if you want to include that rare Luke character, but you want to have the upper level character where you have 2 dice, you have to hope you either get another rare Luke die, or you have to go to an aftermarket and buy just that die, which is probably going to get pricey. You know, I know people are serious about these games. You end up spending less money just selectively buying what you want, but I can see that being an issue for some people.
Star Wars Destiny is a collectible game. And I know most people hate that. And honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of it either. I am more curious than I am anything. Mad, happy. Honestly, I'm kind of... It's not that big of a deal to me, honestly, because Wes is going to buy it, so whatever, right? But I'm mostly curious to see the way that Fantasy Flight puts out a collectible game. We haven't seen that yet. You know, they've gotten really good at creating specific cards for certain meta for the living card games that, you know, everybody's on the same playing field. When they introduce a little bit of a collectible aspect to it, where arguably the people with more money tend to have the better decks, how is that going to affect gameplay? Is it going to be where there's so many people who are saying, well, I don't want to get into this game because it's collectible, therefore I'm just not going to do that well? Or are there going to be those people who say, all I bought was the starter set and like a couple booster packs, swapped out a few cards, and I'm just as good as anybody else.
And I will say that, like, yes, collectibles, it should just say, like, expensive card game, not collectible card game. But really, the hardcore LCG players, I mean, do you want to look at how much money you've put into Netrunner?
$500. Probably more than that.
But like seriously, if you get really into an LCG, you know, they're cranking out chapter packs or booster packs or depending on what game it is, they call them different things.
Chapter pack, adventure pack, data pack, force pack, silent pack,
Mythos
pack, war pack.
Nerd. They crank those out like crazy. Like what, once a month? Maybe?
Yeah, and then plus deluxe expansions.
But so, you know, if you're looking into that, it depends on how fast they release new waves for this game. That's really going to determine how expensive it gets.
And again, you don't really have to dive into it that hard. You know, LCGs have a higher floor but a lower ceiling. Here it has a lower ceiling. So if you really want to just I get the Rey, you get the Kylo, and we just play with that.
And they played together pretty well.
Yeah, they did.
As far as starter packs go, I felt like these did a good job. So one of the big things I'm wondering about this game, I love it, but I'm such an avid Star Wars fan. If Fantasy Flight puts out a Star Wars anything, I'm going to buy it. Would you recommend this game to a non-Star Wars fan? Like, if they hated Star Wars, obviously, no. But if they were just kind of like, oh yeah, that's a pretty cool movie. It's got the Ewoks and Jar Jar's pretty cool. And
why would you say that?
I really hope that in one of the waves, the best card in the whole game is a Jar Jar Binks card. Because it's this like Devil's Gambit of like, do I want to win? But I have to see Jar Jar? Because we can't get rid of him. He's there forever. Yeah. There's no getting rid of Jar Jar. And I think it'd be so funny if they put that in this game. Like, best card in the whole game, Jar Jar. He just kills everything.
So to answer your question, and really it's hard for me to think of like what a non-Star Wars fan is. And it might be me. Like, I like Star Wars. I loved the movies when I was a kid. I still watch them all the time. But I'm not just super into it. And a big part of it is because Wes is my brother-in-law. Like, he has every Star Wars game. But there's no reason for me to get it.
Marvel Destiny or Lord of the Rings Destiny, you'd rather go for those.
That's true. And honestly, if it weren't for the fact that I knew you were getting this, and we
Mhm.
always play games together pretty much, like we don't own a lot of the same game, I would totally get this.
Mhm.
I would be like, damn, what am I gonna cut? Because I can't afford this and Netrunner Thrones, Lord of the Rings, and everything
Yeah.
else, you know? Like, it is, and again, I say it like Magic, not because it's similar to Magic in gameplay or anything. I think we're getting in on the ground floor of something that's gonna be big. Like, there's so many people out there who right now are like, oh, if I had known, like, if I kept my Pokemon cards from when I was a kid, not only would they be, worth a lot of money, but like, man, that would be an awesome thing to be like, I played Pokemon from when it started. I think
Yeah.
Destiny is going to be one of those things where we played it from when it started.
Yeah, and I've heard some people say that like, it's probably going to fizzle out. I think it's going to be a while. I think Fantasy Flight has enough clout to really push this, and Star Wars is so big, this is going to appeal to non-gamers.
Oh, yeah.
The same way people play Magic who would never dream of going to a board game store.
Yeah.
Like, they just buy their cards at Target or whatever,
That's
and they think board gamers are nerds. I think it's going to be the same way. I think you're going to find a bunch of people playing this game that aren't avid board gamers.
I agree.
So guys, I cannot wait to get my booster box, because I'm going to get a booster box for this game. I'm going to sit here. Let me know if you want to see me opening it, because I would love just to sit in here for an hour and open Star Wars packs and show you dice and show you pretty pictures, and you guys can just watch me gush about Star Wars for that long. So I'm excited to see where this game goes. I'm excited to see how they develop it, what kind of excitement there's for in our area, because that can really kill a game, is if you really love a game, but a game like this, you need other people to play it with you. So I'm hoping that people at Gamesville, our FLGS, really, pick this game up and they do competitions and they have nights and stuff with it.
They really need a lot of good game night kit support for this, because what they already have, where you just win alternate art cards and tokens and stuff, is good. But I feel like they're limited for the ones that they have now because they're LCGs. Everybody's supposed to have the same cards. But in a CCG format, since you could possibly win stuff that other people doesn't have.
Yeah.
And that's good. We've never had that before with Fantasy Flight, where I have a card that you just don't have. You haven't gotten that one yet.
And it doesn't have to be something super overpowered, but it can be something that gives you a slight edge in this area, or just does
strategy.
something different that no one else does.
Yeah, or alternate art cards or stuff.
Or see-through dice.
That would be dope, see-through dice. No, I mean, I do know what you mean, though, because, part of the reason why I don't play Dice Masters that much is because there's just not a lot of people around you who play that.
Yeah.
I would play it a lot more if there were more people here. So that really is something that can, like you said, kill a game. So if you do pick this up and you like it, definitely tell your local game store. Find people around in your community to play with, because really, a game isn't just a game. It's a community. We are the people who play Star Wars Destiny, and we want you.
And I really think that most everyone should pick this up. It's not super expensive. I think you can get both starter sets for under $30, I think I've seen. I don't know if it's available quite yet for purchase. From what I've heard,
We didn't purchase it.
it's about $30, $25 to $30 to get both starter sets, which isn't bad for a game. And for the stuff you get and the nice dice and the tokens and everything, I think that's worth it. So I would say pick it up or find a friend and you can each pick one up.
Yeah.
Check it out. Let us know what you think. As soon as we find it available for purchase online, we'll go ahead and put a link in the purchase box down below.
And while you're here, subscribe and you'll never be bored. Sup, nerds? I'm Tom. Never.